SWERI, 3 Institute, was established by 2004 Southwest Forest Health and Wildfire Prevention Act. And with the goal of trying to reduce the fire danger and improve forest health throughout the Western United States. And also, this institute is trying to get together to develop and deliver the best available science to local communities and stakeholders and practitioners. That's what we're trying to do. This is SWERI 3 Institutes. And under SWERI, we built a SWERI wood utilization team with generous funding from Forest Service Wood Innovation Grant Program. And this team built last year. And basically this team is kind of a network of academic, government, and industry partners, including 6 key members over here. I'd like to ask stand up as I named a few seconds here. Team leader, Colorado State Forest Service team. Can you stand up and stay up a second here? Stay up. And Carmen Austin from the New Mexico Forestry Division. And Rich Vandermark, he's with the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. He's not here today. Also, there are 3 key members from Ecological Restoration Institute, Damon Vaughn, and Rich Edwards, and myself. 6 of us are the key members for organizing the seminar. So thank you. You may sit down. Basically, what we're trying to do, we're trying to increase the pace and the scale of forest restoration activities in the Southwest by expanding forest industry capacity. That's basically what we're trying to do. And that's our wood utilization team, and they are the one actually also going to moderate our technical session as well. Let me see. Let's go back to presentation mode, please. Okay. Our seminar is to promote the innovations in forest operations and the biomass utilization in the Southwest, with focusing on the 5 topics: value-added products, innovations in the forest operations, railroad transportation, forest and the state agency contracting, and then challenge and opportunity with the forestry contractors in the Southwest. That's kind of a general the topics we're going to focus on. For that, we have 6 panels prepared for today. Today we have 4 panels and 3 panels tomorrow. And will be done by noon by tomorrow. So that's what we have. Before get into our program, I'd like to thank to our sponsors. Forest Service, I already mentioned, and SWCA Environmental Consultant. And can you raise your hand, the representative here from there? And then the Automation. Automation, we have, there's a representative right there. And making the wood cement, wood cement products. And also we also have the representative from the New Life Forest Products based in Arizona. Okay, raise hand, thank you. I really like to thank them, our sponsors, for their generous financial support for this seminar. I'd like to say a few housekeeping items. So I think that it is important for us to understand where the restrooms are, right? That's very important to know, right? So men's room is way back there, across the hall, and the women's room right behind me. And there's also family bathroom back there as well. So that's the bathroom. And as far as we are under COVID situation, and a hotel requires wear the mask at all times except drinking, eating, and then for people, those of you speaking here, you are welcome to wear a remote mask during your presentation if you like. Now we are recording this presentation, and we will be posting that video on our ecological restoration website. And for remote participants, I hope you see me, you can hear me. You are muted and your video is off. Please use Q&A to ask any questions at any time. That really facilitate, we can really easily pick up your question and your answers get answered. They'll be read aloud speakers during the Q&A by moderator, so hopefully that everybody can hear. And then some of you who need to have SAF credits, just let us know. And then also the people you're online, type your name into the chat and mention CFE. We can help you on that. And you can read for the people getting on the online tomorrow. You can use the same link to join the today and tomorrow our seminar. In-person seminar. There are some sign-up sheets, sign-up papers out there under the registration table, so please let us know. Also, we have some extra mask available on the registration desk, so if we need that one, then we are welcome to grab the mask on the registration table. So I think without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our one of the speaker here, Laura Wolf, and she's going to give us some welcoming comment. And Laura Wolf, so I'm just going to save our time just making her title here. She is Wood Utilization and Innovation Program Specialist for the U.S. Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station in Lakewood, Colorado. And she's going to make some welcoming remarks for our seminar. Laura?
Good morning. Thank you, Han, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, so much for joining us this week for what promises to be an excellent seminar. I'm sorry that my federal colleagues and I can't join you in person, but I'm really glad that so many of you are able to be together, although I can't actually see you. But for perhaps, you're probably getting together for the first time, maybe in a long time. So really glad that you could be together. Hopefully we can all be together again soon, but I really appreciate the SWRI Wood Utilization team for designing a hybrid event to allow for broader participation. I've had the pleasure of working with this team over the past year or so, and I'm excited to see what they've put together for us today, especially after their excellent webinar last spring. This seminar was in part funded by a 2020 U.S. Forest Service Wood Innovations Grant, as Han mentioned, and it's part of ongoing efforts by the SWRIs, the U.S. Forest Service, and others to address key issues in forest restoration in the Southwest. The SWRIs have been an essential partner to the U.S. Forest Service in bridging the gap between research and management, knowledge sharing, as we're doing here today, and helping us to accomplish meaningful work on the ground. We're all here today to learn more about innovations in forest operations and biomass utilization, but I'd also like to remind us of the deeper why behind these topics. The past couple of years in the entire West have been a good reminder of why this work is so important. This year, there was a nearly 1 million acre fire in California that decimated an entire town, including the home of some of my family. Arizona saw its most active wildfire season in nearly a decade, with close to 500,000 acres burning by July. 2020 was the most active fire season on record for Colorado, with the 3 largest wildfires in the state's recorded history. And fire season is becoming a year-round phenomenon. Just yesterday, a fire started in Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. Now, fire is an essential part of our western and southwestern landscapes, but changed conditions in our forests and climate over the past century have altered the way fires behave. There is an increased and critical need for restoration work for healthier forests, watersheds, and habitats. Exploring innovative uses for biomass and new developments in forest operations can incentivize markets for the material coming out of the woods, helping to ease the financial burden of forest restoration and therefore increase the pace and scale of this crucial work. And this work not only leads to healthier ecosystems, but healthier communities and economies as well. We've got an exciting array of speakers touching on many aspects of forest operations and forest markets in the Southwest and beyond. And I hope this seminar will bring everyone a deeper understanding of the challenges as well as the opportunities in this sector. Thanks again so much to the Sweary Wood Utilization team, and I hope everyone enjoys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. We appreciate it. Again, we appreciate the Forest Service helping us with get this program established. Thank you again. We're going to jump right into our keynote speech session here. And I'd like to have our wood utilization team member, Carmen Austin, to introduce our first keynote speaker. Carmen?
Thank you, Han. Good morning, everybody. So very nice to see, well, some bright faces and faces behind masks, but very happy to be here with you. I'm just going to dive right into the keynote speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Brent Racher. Dr. Racher is a manager and owner of 2 natural resource management companies here in New Mexico, Racher Resource Management and Restoration Solutions. After receiving his BS from New Mexico State University in range science, Dr. Racher completed his master's and PhD specializing in range ecology, fire ecology, behavior, and range improvements from Texas Tech University. Dr. Racher's knowledge and experience in fire behavior, fire ecology, and land managers' need for expertise in prescribed burning prompt him to start Racher Resource Management. In his endeavor, he has provided private and government entities with expert fire management for planning operations, much of the time as a turnkey service. Once in private industry, Dr. Racher also realized that vegetation and habitat management in rangelands, forests, and riparian ecosystems largely lacked the capitalized resources that could obtain a set of objectives and implement them. So he helped form Restoration Solutions to bring a combination of mechanical and chemical vegetative manipulations to the land managers in need of that expertise. He currently serves as president of the New Mexico Forest Industry Association. Please welcome Dr. Racher.
Thank you, Carmen. It looks like I probably can't move very much because the camera's here. But it's great to see everybody. I would love to thank Sweary, especially, and the wood utilization team for bringing us all together. This is nice to see people. It's nice to be in front of people. Although, you know, I will say honestly, this is probably one of the first times in a year and a half that I've spoken in front of a group. It's the first time probably you guys knew that I had a pair of pants on while I'm speaking to you. So, you know, it's good to be here, and I really appreciate the Swearys for putting this together. When we talked, I think it was last spring, about doing this, about having this, they asked me to discuss maybe the path forward for the forest industry, particularly here in New Mexico, although I can mention some other parts of the world, the Southwest in general. But, you know, with all the state of the world, we're headed down the pathways, and it's either going to be bright and shiny, or it's going to be rough. Does this clicker work? Perfect. Oh. How do I go back one? There we go. First of all, I'll put in my plug real quick. As Carmen mentioned, I'm president of the New Mexico Forest Industry Association. We are a trade association for contractor wood utilization facilities, even consultants and mill owners, basically anything that has to do with forests or watersheds in New Mexico. And we've unified to form that voice for the people in New Mexico, so we can talk both policy, we can talk problems, we can talk solutions. And behind, our belief is behind every healthy forest is a healthy forest industry. And I think that's right, because, the people that I represent and what I do myself, we're out there on the ground, and we're the ones doing it. So I am gonna have some very negative things that I'm talking about today, but I really tried to lighten it up, really tried to find some optimism. You're gonna see a lot of memes today, because we need to be honest, but we need to talk solutions. We need to talk how to dig ourselves out of whatever holes we're in, how to make things work, how to improve things. So it's not always hopeless. It's just, if you look at things hopelessly, there's always a way to get out of it. I will say that for the forest industry in New Mexico, we are still reeling from the MSO shutdown that we had, which was only a year ago that it ended. That situation caused a lot of scrambling. We saw some heroes come out of that, but we also, it was a little bit of a gut check for us. Things were rolling along good. Not everybody in the Southwest felt that. Only one forest in Arizona felt it. But it was a reminder that there are things out there, there are people out there, whether they do it cognizantly or not, will tear down everything that we've tried to build for years. We built partnerships in this room and in the Southwest with people that have pushed to move things forward together, to look at each other's point of views. And yet we still deal with the fact that it's much easier to stop things than it is to do things. So, the Mexican spotted owl injunction that happened here in the Southwest, and particularly here in New Mexico, stopped a lot of things for a year. We lost several companies because of it. People retired, people sold out, people quit. We're still reeling from it. We still have companies that are struggling right now. And we're looking for those relationships. We're looking for those opportunities to re-engage, to continue to engage. But it's very hard on that gut check to continue to invest. That's probably the biggest point right there is the investment that we need to make, the signing on the dotted line. We've got to have some assurances. We've got to mitigate some of that risk. So moving on from that, COVID is our other big issue right now. So we went from Mexican spotted owl in Junction, where we actually turned around and started enjoying a lot of company in our misery. Suddenly, the whole world shut down a year and a half ago. And what that meant for us is we faced, issues of whether we're a critical part of the workforce. We got quickly past that. We got back to work. We've got workplace issues. We're watching and facing right now possibly vaccine mandates and how to deal with that. And we all have our beliefs in what is real, what is not real. I know, I'm a vaccinated person. I got COVID anyway. I got over it. Life is good for me. Not everybody has that situation. But, from the industry side, we are having to make decisions right now about how to keep our workforce safe, where those safety measures are, how to follow the guidelines that are out there, and new guidelines that are coming down, making us make choices about what employees we can or can't keep, what employees we can or can't use on projects, and how we deal with that. Because one of our biggest assets in the industry is these people, the people that know how to do stuff, the people that know where things are, how to get things done, how to help us move forward in the industry. And, we've had some numbers out there. The people that work in the woods, I have heard on a national level, not here in New Mexico, not in the Southwest, on a national level, only about 50% of them are vaccinated. And either getting them vaccinated or working without the rest of that workforce is going to be a difficult choice for us. How we deal with that as a business, how we deal with that as an employer, how we deal with that as an employee will have some telling signs. The one I really like, and I mentioned a lot, is the vaccines, and we're finding out new stuff all the time. A lot of people think that as soon as you get the vaccine, you can start licking the handrails at Walmart. And it's not actually the case. So, like I said, we're trying to smile about this and move forward. But, the fire seasons that Laura mentioned, during all this COVID, during all this everything, we still had the reality of the world happening. We still had wildfires. We still are trying to move forward with forest and watershed restoration. That is real world stuff that you can't put off, you can't stop. It has to continue to happen. So, to continue on with more bad news, the people shortage out there. I think every agency, every entity, every person in this room is dealing with it. And I am probably dating myself by having this first meme up there. A lot of the younger people may not even know what that means. But there is actually a song that talks about long-haired freaky people need not apply. We're taking those now. We're taking those applications. We're trying to get the best employees we possibly can. But the people shortage is real, and I don't know that it's going to be solved. I don't know. We need people. We're willing to pay for people in many instances, but just paying more or paying living wage, getting higher wage determinations doesn't necessarily mean that everything's hunky-dory. That, prices are what they are. Money doesn't grow on trees. Sometimes it does come from trees. But, we have to we have to keep moving forward with what we have, and we've got to realize that the shortages in people and the human capital are going to continue to happen. So, you know, not that we have to work ourselves to death, but we've got to just acknowledge it, keep moving. I think even most of the agencies in this room, you are facing people shortages every day. Every one of you is trying to hire. Every one of you is trying to fill positions, and you can't get them all filled. You can't find the people you need. You're training people. You're having to bring them up. You're having to get them to the point where they are productive and are getting things done. That's the world we live in. We just got to keep moving forward. We got to get done what we can get done and keep pushing forward. And then the other one is the supply chain. This is real. We've definitely felt this for over a year and a half. It's getting worse. I have a lot of equipment in the woods, a lot of people, you know, things break, things, you know, we're constantly fixing stuff, constantly trying to make things work. Trying to replace stuff with new stuff. We can't get new stuff right now. It's, you know, just pickups, for God's sake. Going out there and instead of buying a pickup, I ordered a pickup. They can't tell me when I'm going to get it. I actually had a company that does a lot of repair work for us on hydraulics say that it is taking them 4 times longer to get parts, to get the stuff they need, to find the stuff they need and get it in than they ever have before. So, you know, it's teaching us a lot of patience, but, you know, the reality is the supply chain is broken down and it will take a long time to fix. I don't know when it's going to catch up. I don't know when things are going to be better. We've got to be patient. To the forest side of things, during all these problems, these human problems, these people problems, these everything, the forest continues to grow. And we are continuing to remove less out of the forest than they're growing. Across every forest type in the Southwest. They're growing trees and accumulating fuels, and we're not taking very much out. We're burning some. In fact, as Laura mentioned, you know, Colorado has seen the worst it's ever had last year, and I was up there quite a bit for that. It was shocking to Coloradans. I know in New Mexico and Arizona we've had those years already, and I think we'll have them again. We'll continue to have them. So the upside, there is some good news out there, and that's funding. And I think the last 2 years of smoking in over half the country for most of the summer has allowed some funding mechanisms to come into place to push some money. Not only have budgets generally stayed the same or slightly increased, but now we've got the BIF, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, which is pushing money down the pipe. There's some restrictions on it, but we expect to see that. States are doing okay. States are doing well on funding. Most of the time they're pushing money into the things that we've said that they need. Things are going in the right direction as far as funding. With the realization that we still have all these other things we're going to have to deal with. You know, people aren't going to magically appear. New equipment isn't going to magically appear. We just got to figure out how to get more things done with what we need. So then there again, you know, the patience. In all honesty, many of us in this room and many people across the United States have worked for years, decades even, to improve the authorities we have. From the federal standpoint, we've got a lot of things right now. We've got expedited CEs. We've got, permanent stewardship authority. We're able to do NEPA better. The CEs in general should keep the ball moving, and that's continuing to get better, I hope. We got the fire funding fixed. Theoretically, things like shared stewardship and good neighbor authority, those are all upside things. We've removed a lot of the barriers that were identified out there, and now we've got to get it done. We've got to get the ball moving, or keep the ball moving, or move the ball faster. The state of New Mexico in general also has some authorities that it has never had before. Things like the Forest and Watershed Restoration Act gave it the ability to combine economic development and growth and long-term projects. It gave it recurring funding. They never had recurring funding. They couldn't stress that money from year to year. They didn't know that they would have money next year. We fixed some of that. Now, still, some of their money comes 1 year at a time, but they know they're going to have some money next year. They've got some prescribed fire legislation that they're doing rulemaking on right now, and that should improve our ability to do some things as far as restoring our watersheds. So when we look at things, the wood we have in the Southwest, or the wood that a lot of the wood that we are taking out for forest and watershed restoration is what I would call low quality wood. We have to deal with that. There's ways to use that out there. Thermal heating, cooling, which I pile in, firewood with that. We use a lot of firewood here in New Mexico. We've got some pellet operations across the Southwest. There's lots of opportunities to continue to use that and to keep those operations going. Electricity and biofuels. Arizona's taken advantage of this. Colorado's taken advantage of this. New Mexico has, policy-wise, probably taken it itself out of the ability to either produce electricity or make biofuels from woody resources. Biochar is an opportunity that I think is there, I think will work. It's working in places. Mulch and compost, of course, there's always a market for that if you can manage the transportation effectively, if you can manage the handling. Shavings, posts, and poles, similar, although shavings generally go a little bit farther. And then your lumber and Southwest construction. Those opportunities exist, and while we're doing that, while we're utilizing this wood, while we're both in the woods and making a product out of this, we're creating jobs, we're employing people, we're putting people to work and improving our local economies and our regional economies. Our questions then come not from what do you need us to do, but how can we do this with you? Because we are partners. Carmen brought up when we were discussing this, the three-legged stool. We're all in this together. We've got various partners at the table. We've got nonprofits. We've got agency people. We've got industry. And at the end of the day, you need us to get it done, and we need to get it done for you. So, what do you want? How are you going to bring this to us? What are the treatment types going to look like? Both, is it just service, or is there wood products with it? Is it all small trees? Is it a mixture? Is it, what is it going to be? Is there going to be salvage? Is there not going to be salvage? Is it going to be green? Is it going to be black? All those things, how we have a say in it, but a lot of this is brought to us. And so, having these discussions, having this come together is important for both of us, that we work on that together. How are the contract mechanisms going to be? Are they short-term contracts? Are they service contracts? Are they timber contracts? Are they stewardship contracts? Are they multi-year contracts? Are they single-year contracts? Because when we look at investment, we have to either gather up our financial resources from our past work and spend it, or we can go out and borrow money. And to borrow money is a scary thing because we're talking 4 or 5, 10 years down the road of being able to pay that back. If we want that investment to happen, we've got to have the contract mechanisms that help that happen, both at the state and federal level and through various other mechanisms. So, what we ask for from you is that the way these things come down, you be fair, you be transparent. And I don't know, transparent's not exactly the word. Transparent has a lot of different meanings and results. But you be open and honest with how you're doing stuff. The fairness, I love this little baby, the fairness creamer you're using. Being open, honest, and competitive, giving people the opportunities to grow various industries. And one of the people I consulted as I was putting this together is Kim Kostelnik. Most of you know Kim. She has worked for our Forest Industry Association for many years since her retirement from state forestry. But, we're talking about the problems with contracting and mechanisms and how we have maneuvered through stuff over the last several decades to try to get stuff done. Sometimes we fixed problems, sometimes we just went around problems. But, this quote that human nature is to take the path of least resistance, we've done that a lot of times. We have some fundamental problems in our contract mechanisms and the way things are done. And we really just have to, instead of quit going around them, we need to fix them. We've got to provide the solution, not just walk around it. So, we need to bulldoze those things and start over. With that, I think, again, thanking SWERI, thanking Han and Carmen for having us here today. We can do this. We can do it together. We just have to keep the ball moving. So thank you all very much. I hope I wasn't too negative. You all have a great day.
Thank you, Brent. Now we'll open up for questions and answers. If anybody has any questions in the audience, or if you've got questions on Zoom, please send them in.
Yes, sir.
Michael.
We need you to have a microphone.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks for the great presentation. It sounds like you're alluding to a level of coordination and collaboration that where you're personally questioning the value of continuing to organize ourselves around competition for individual gain amongst businesses, sectors, states. Could you say a little bit more about what you're really feeling there?
I don't know that I am. So collaboration, coordination is good. At the larger level, at the bigger picture, we need to have that happening. When it comes down to individual contracts, projects. I think we need to recognize that coordination, collaboration. It has a value. It has a feedback mechanism that should be recognized in that competition. But competition and actually the transfer of money from one entity to another, especially private entity, we have to keep a level of competitiveness in place. We have to fairly allow different companies to step forward to compete in the marketplace. And really, that's how we figure out some pricing, although the lowest price isn't always the best price for getting these things done. So no, not taking competition off the table. In fact, I'm actually advocating for better competition, or with a realization of the factors that should be part of that competition.
How about competition to contribute instead of competition to take and remove and gain for personal interest? So if we have competition the way we have competition now in commerce, politics, it's competition to take. Who can take the most? Who can make the most?
Right.
Leaves out a lot of the other stakeholders, concerns, issues, future generations. And so that's what I'm interacting with you about.
Well, and so the competition to take, and that's where I'm saying you have to have openness, you have to have some transparency in that competition. You need to let people compete, but you need to recognize the factors that are important. You need to recognize somebody that benefits the local economy or benefits the regional economy, somebody that benefits the community. These factors are hard to distinguish. We know what they are. They're hard to quantify. But I think they are tremendous value that is most of the time glazed over.
Yeah, that's great. Good, thanks for your response.
Hi, Charles Curtin from the Sangre de Cristo Initiative. Brent, you made an interesting point or comment where you said New Mexico's taken itself out of its ability to produce electricity and biofuels. Could you unpack that a little more?
In particular, I'll talk about electricity. Biofuels still maybe has a window open, although they're struggling with the door. And I think you could probably talk about this more than I could. So electricity, policy-wise, especially in the Energy Transition Act that they passed a few years ago, it really took electrical generation from woody biomass off the table. I don't think it's viable. I don't think it competes. And that was a conversation that was held. Not talking about what we need for our forest or watershed. That was a conversation that was had amongst the electricity people, saying, "Oh no, solar and wind want all of this." So without the realization that something's going to happen with this wood, something's going to happen. And in many cases, this wood's going to burn either in an open fire or in a controlled environment. So I think that is the main point about electricity. Biofuels still has an opportunity, but it's very, I don't know, it's difficult sometimes to find that pathway forward and to get especially those fuels to the marketplace with a pricing structure that can make it work.
Thank you, Brent. I think we're going to keep the ball rolling here. Appreciate your very exciting, interesting talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please, thank you one more again. Thank you. Well, we are going to move to our next keynote speaker, probably Nate Anderson. He's going to put some different flavor on his keynote speech. Nate Anderson is a research forester with the U.S. Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station based in Missoula, Montana. And his specialization is forest research, management, operations, and economics with recent work focused on forest biomass, bioenergy, and the bioproduct supply chain. And he has helped develop economic models to guide investment in restoration and bioeconomy. And he's been taking good leadership. He's a great leader running a lot of the biomass projects and regional biomass projects such as Banner. That's for biomass research and basically bioenergy alliance network of the Rockies. That's the one of the project he participated. And he is also taking the leadership on the Mid-Atlantic Sustainable Biomass Consortium. And so he's been doing that, and not only those projects, but many other biomass projects. He's been great leader on those projects. Nate has a doctoral degree in forest research management from State University of New York, and he was a master's degree from a University of Maryland. With that, Nate.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. And my presentation is going to be recorded because I can't be there in person, but depending on where the schedule's at, we'll have some time for questions and answers and discussion afterwards. So really glad to be able to join you remotely. Thanks, Han and Damon, very much for all your coordination on this great seminar, and look forward to interacting with you. If we are short on time and don't have a chance to interact after the recorded session, please feel free to contact me anytime, and I'll be participating remotely throughout the next couple of days. So thanks very much for the invitation to be here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Nate Anderson. I'm a research forester with the Rocky Mountain Research Station, and I'm going to talk to you today about bioeconomy enterprises to improve the financial viability of forest restoration. And often when people talk about this topic, they talk at pretty high levels, landscape scale treatment, regional economics, outputs for potentially large facilities or aggregated output. I'm going to take a different approach today and focus on the economic analysis associated with individual facilities and projects and investments, and try to connect those to restoration on the ground and how we look at that from a techno-economic standpoint. So I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm going to focus on a case study in Challis, Idaho, but I think you'll see that the case study has actually got some really nice elements that are broadly applicable across the Rocky Mountains and any place really that we're talking about restoration that involves removals. And then I want to just briefly touch on the resource assessment and sawmill feasibility study that were part of this project. I don't have time to go into them, but I will mention them. And then spend most of my time on techno-economic analysis. I'll describe what it is, how we conduct it, and then use biochar and bioenergy projects at small and medium scales as an example of some of the results we can look at from this type of analysis. I have some conclusions, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion. So here are my conclusions right up front, so you can decide whether or not I've made the case for these. First, private investment is a driver of the restoration economy, and we need to be mindful of that need and see how we can support it with good analytics, including techno-economic analysis, and I'll give you some examples. At the same time, enterprises need to be scaled appropriately to match the resource on the ground and the expected flows of timber and biomass that might result from treatment. So scale, I'm going to talk a lot about scale today. Solid wood products are likely to remain an important economic driver for restoration, but they can face significant financial challenges at small and medium scales. Again, we need to be mindful of this when we're thinking about marrying restoration and fuel treatment on public lands with private enterprise downstream. And then I hope by the end of this talk you can see that techno-economic analysis can de-risk investment in the bioeconomy, particularly for entrepreneurs, in a few different ways. One is by quantifying potential financial outcomes and the variability and uncertainty associated with investment. The other is comparing different types of projects and investments to one another, looking at the importance of different variables, and then the effects of different market conditions or public policies. And again, the big picture here is de-risking investment with good analysis. So I'd like to thank some people who have been involved in this project. So it was a team effort. Greg Lotta and Dennis Becker at the University of Idaho, Attica Consultants, including Gary Cantrell and David New. We've all been working together on this on different parts of the project, and with help from staff at Salmon Chalice National Forest. Intermountain Region provided some funding for the project, and some of the work that you'll see here is leveraging work that was funded by USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. We also had industry partners, a great project advisory group, and I'd also like to thank Matt Delaney from Delaney Forestry. He and I have worked together on some biochar techno-economic analysis for a little while now, so thanks, Matt. So this is a forest industry feasibility study. The purpose of the study is to help identify the specific types and scale of forest industry that is likely to be financially successful in this location, and linking that to how it might benefit the forest in terms of facilitating restoration and the surrounding communities in terms of economic development. The primary goals are to improve forest management on the ground, including fuel treatment and restoration, facilitate investment in the local and regional bioeconomy, and help provide economic opportunity in these areas, many of which has seen the decline of traditional forest industry. So we broke this problem into three parts. One was a resource assessment led by the University of Idaho that looked at the stocks and flows of timber and biomass under different treatment scenarios. The second part, led by Attica Consulting, was a sawmill feasibility assessment. They have deep roots and expertise in this, and so they were looking at this question of, is Chalice, Idaho a suitable location for investment in a new sawmill, and at what scale? And then what I'm going to focus on today is the part that I led, which is the techno-economic analysis of small and medium scale ventures. So, sneak peek at that resource assessment. Most of us involved in this workshop today understand that if you take 4.4 million acres of national forest land, not all of that's available for removals. We need to consider administrative designations like wilderness, land use patterns, land use objectives, maybe roadless areas that are unlikely to see new road infrastructure built to facilitate removal. And then on the logistics side, we need to look at how far these areas are from the location of the facility. In this case, anything more than 3 hours round trip is likely to be unviable from a transportation cost standpoint. So we end up with this available area if we consider the logistics, the kind of the legal and management related aspects of treatment. And we know that in that available area, not all of it is forested at a stocking level that facilitates removals. We do use prescribed burns without mechanical treatment and removals for areas with low stocking, but in some areas with really high stocking, we need to be mindful of what removals might come off treatments in those areas. So if we consider all this, for this particular case, we end up with about 400,000 acres available, quote, available, with an average stocking of 9.1 thousand board feet per acre, and this stocking level of 3.6 billion board feet across this subset of the total forest area. And we can think about then use over time at the 25 million board feet a year level, 50 million board feet level, 100 million board feet a year level. And today I'm just going to focus on the 25 million board feet a year level. So a level of harvesting in which stocks are still continuing to grow on the landscape. Sneak peek at the sawmill feasibility assessment. One of the scenarios that Attica looked at was an end-auger mill at this 25 million board feet a year level. I'm not going to share other results other than just to tell you that at that scale, at lower prices or even average prices, we have a lot of negative outcomes in terms of the financial viability of a mill like this in Chalice. At the higher price level, here the Q3 benchmark in Q3 of 2020, we do have a positive net present value on a 25 million board feet a year mill. Attica looked at some other options to get the profitability up, but let's just focus on this for a minute. At this level, the non-saw material removed is in excess of 30,000 tons a year, so 30,000 tons a year. And this provides us with a little insight into what scale of operation we might look at. There are other mill residues in play, but here we're looking at the non-saw logs and biomass component coming off treatment at this 25 million board feet a year level. So if we had $2.5 billion in the bank, maybe we build a chemical pulping operation that takes 1 million tons a year. Not going to happen, right? So I put that in as a benchmark to point out the importance of appropriate scale. In this case, we're looking at things much smaller than that, maybe 80,000 tons a year or less than that, 65,000 tons a year for a liquid biofuel operation at the 80 million CapEx level. Or maybe a lot of different smaller operations, maybe a $4 million pyrolysis system that produces biochar with a single reactor. That could be 6,500 tons a year. Or even small scale heating applications, more like the Fuels for Schools program. Scale is important. Location is also important. These analyses are conducted for a particular technology deployed under a particular set of circumstances in a particular location. And this should be intuitive. Location is important because we have different raw material costs, availability, different infrastructure, different transportation costs, different workforces in different places, different labor costs, different training requirements, maybe seasonality associated with availability. You get the idea. Location is obviously important. So with TEA, this is a modeling process. We build a model and we combine two different things, right? One is a detailed engineering specification for a particular project. Here, this diagram is focused on liquid fuel production with biochar co-product. But we marry that with a cost-benefit analysis that's a pretty routine financial analysis for industry, but we do it in a very detailed way. You could use a lot of different metrics like internal rate of return or minimum selling price, but I'm going to show you results for net present value. And net present value takes all the costs and benefits of a particular project, all the revenues and all the costs over the whole life of the project, and boils it down into one single value that accounts for the time value of money. And this is a really good metric to compare the same project under different conditions or different projects that are kind of similar to one another. Not great for projects that are wildly different from one another, but you'll see what I mean in a moment. One quick note, we use a simulation-based approach, so we don't use one value for each input. We use a distribution of values for those inputs. So diesel fuel price, product prices, conversion rates, discount rates, feedstock costs, those are all entered as distributions. And so the output is also a distribution, kind of ranging from worst case scenario on the left to best case scenario on the right of that orange NPV histogram. So the middle is kind of the central tendency, but we also look at worst and best case scenarios, and then the effect of individual variables on those outcomes. So let's look at the different types of projects here. We're considering not just, I'm going to share mostly biochar stuff with you today, because it's been a hot topic recently, but we have applied this to large-scale power plants, biomass power, pellet mills, biofuels facilities, both small and large, cogen, commercial firewood, post and pole. And so this method can be applied to a really broad spectrum of potential projects. Let's focus on biochar though, because I mentioned it's probably most useful to focus on similar types of projects. So here we have 4 different options. All of these in this table are deployed for biochar only, and we're looking at a feedstock cost here of $50 a ton on the front end, and you can see different outcomes, right? Some of these carbonator, we have a mean NPV of $340,000. The Artichar system by itself, one module is losing $1 million, but if you can daisy chain some together, it's a profitable project at $1.4 billion over 10 years. The Organolock system, look at that number, it's negative $1 million over 10 years for biochar only. The details are really important here, and you'll know what I mean in just a moment. Keep that in mind for the Organolock system, biochar only. Let's look at the carbonator. So if we deploy the carbonator just for making biochar, we might experience a mean net present value of the project for over the project of 10 years, $160,000. Now, net present value of 0 includes a minimum rate of return here. And so anything above 0 is gravy. It meets our minimum rate of return and then some. And so we can look at the cash flows over time, boil it down into this value. But the TigerCat carbonator is a mobile system. What if we deploy that for slash management? So financial performance is really sensitive in this case to feedstock cost. And feedstock cost here is a gate cost of $50 a dry ton, and you can see over the range of possible feedstock cost, that range of outcomes is huge, from negative 3.3 million to positive 3.3 million over 10 years. You can see some of the other variables like biochar price, also obviously important. If your main product is biochar, you need a higher price for your product is going to result in better financial performance. So we can look at these individual variables and zero in this case of the carbonator for slash disposal. If that price of feedstock delivered to a unit deployed in an industrial setting is $50 a ton, that could be quite a bit higher than if this unit is operating in a forward operating environment on a log landing, for example, where processing costs might be $17 a ton. And you can see how we get a better outcome in terms of net present value for a particular project over 10 years. For this unit. Let's go look at that Organolock system. I mentioned the Organolock system deployed for biochar only loses in our calculations for Chalice $1 million over a 10-year project. But this system is specifically designed to have a nice heat demand associated with it. So if we actually deploy it in a situation where we have a heat offtake and also a biochar product, we have a net present value of $50,000 over 10 years, or sorry, over a 20-year project period. That meets our minimum target for return on investment and then some. And so it's a good investment if it's deployed in this context where we have heat and biochar value together. So we can compare different systems deployed in different situations and look at best and worst case scenarios. Something quick to mention here is that these systems are these analyses that we've conducted here are just market values. There's no funny business in terms of carbon credits or incentives or high values for renewable power. When we look at the Hearst boiler system, the heat value of that system is pegged specifically to natural gas value, not some sort of adjusted price for the value of renewable energy. So that leads us to some other points that I'd like to make. One is often these are not standalone operations. They're actually working in an industrial ecology where they're interacting with other businesses, and this can result in external economies of scale where businesses working together in this industrial ecology actually generate benefits for individual operations. So we can think of one firm's waste being another firm's input, and that having certain benefits. And this is more of the type of situation we'd like to be modeling, not just one single operation. One other point I would just like to make is, we haven't included any policy incentives in this. And so let's look at the limitations and maybe opportunities associated with this. On the resource assessment side, we need better inventory data. We need better quality, better resolution, better coverage. And many of you who have worked on these types of projects know that. It's often difficult to accurately include the effects of disturbance on growth and yield in stocks. That's a big need. We need to have clearly defined treatment units to generate investment grade information. Where are these treatments going to take place, can influence costs. And then road conditions. If we assume all the roads that are in a particular road layer are amazing, we're going to make some false assumptions about transportation costs. So this feeds directly into the sawmill feasibility assessment. We need to focus on a single configuration and a single option for technology to really generate high detail in our economic assessment. That's kind of like phase 2 of this would be that single configuration, single option deployment. And then cost of road improvements can be very important here. Administrative costs may come into play, and then policy support. That's not considered in any way here. Things like loan guarantees or other types of incentives that might be in play. And in techno-economic analysis, we want to translate these generic models into specific project proposals that are really tailored to specific entrepreneurs and their conditions. So back to the conclusions. Private investment is a driver for the restoration economy. We need to recognize that and marry it to this, landscape scale treatment and increasing the pace and scale of restoration on public lands. Enterprises must be scaled appropriately to match the expected flows of resources from those treatments. Solid wood products are really important and part of this industrial ecology, but we need to be mindful of scale there and look at the financial challenges that smaller and medium scale mills may face. And then techno-economic analysis can be this pretty valuable tool here. So thank you so much for having me here. Glad to take questions virtually. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate. So I can see, as you can see, Nate has been focusing on the trying to making things more economically feasible and trying to better understand about the economics associated with the fuel reduction and the forest restoration operations and some feasibility of the utilization of those biomass and wood materials coming out of that. So that's been his focus quite a bit in the past, and he's still doing it, and he's going to do them more in the future. So anyway, so I think we can still take a couple of questions, and people online, please write your question on the Q&A, and we will read aloud of that question for everybody, and also any questions here on site for Nate. Yes, way back there. Can you give him a mic so that the people on the online can hear the questions?
Good morning, David Old from Oldwood. So my question is, what was the outcome? Which one should we try and do? I'm in industry. We try and go do stuff. I just learned about the carbonator. I just looked that up. Interesting looking thing. Does it work? What do you recommend?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So I'm gonna end run around that question and just mention that I think one of the great things about the restoration work that we do is this. It's a really nice example of this triple helix that we think of universities and university researchers working together with private sector, with businesses and NGOs and things like that, and then also with government. And I'm an employee of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Forest Service, in the Research and Development branch, and that triple helix of industry, of academia, of government, and that industry, including the private sector. I think we all have different roles here. And as some of you who have read my papers have read probably 200 disclaimers that none of this is an endorsement of any particular company or any particular course of action. In my role in research and development, what we try to do is take the resources that we have available to us and try to understand kind of the art of the possible, right? What are the conditions under which a certain piece of equipment or a certain configuration or a certain supply chain, if we think of the role of the Forest Service interacting with contractors and loggers, interacting with the downstream supply chain all the way to the end user, what are the conditions under which a particular course of action is likely to fail in terms of meeting our goals and objectives? And what are the conditions under which it's kind of on the bubble in that gray area? And what are the conditions under which a particular course of action is likely to be successful? And one of the biggest objectives of a private investment in any enterprise is profitability. And so I'm not in a position to endorse any particular company or course of action or piece of equipment. That's not my role in this triple helix. But what we do need to do on the government side is look to how we can bring our resources to bear to take a very risky, very uncertain environment in terms of capital investment and help de-risk that to achieve not just our land management goals, but also these other goals that we have on the table. One of them that's already been mentioned today is rural economic development. That's an explicit objective of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And that's really where I'm coming at it. So I think what we would like to do with this type of analysis is provide information to people who then can take it. And one of my last conclusions was individual entrepreneurs are not necessarily going to have the resources to do this kind of detailed analysis at this high academic level, but hopefully we can produce products that help those entrepreneurs tailor the information, their business plan to what's available in terms of the best available science. So that's probably an unsatisfying answer if you're looking for which horse to bet on, but yeah, you can read some of these papers and maybe that'll help develop a business plan.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Well, for fairness, I'm thinking that if, oh, you have another question? Okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
Nate, this is Molly Pitts with the Colorado Timber Industry Association, and I really found this quite interesting, but one of my basic questions is, what is the existing program on the salmon chalice, and can they even meet the needs of the volume that you put up in your study? Because at the end of the day, that's your biggest risk to the timber industry, is securing timber from federal lands. So I was just curious, what is the allowable cut on the salmon chalice, and what is their existing program, and can they meet the needs?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I can't speak to their current allowable cut. I can tell you that we worked closely with the staff there to understand what the future holds for treatment. And I think one of the things that's related to your question is this chicken and egg question. Is how much is the cut driven by the market, and how much is the market driven by the cut? And I think a lot of people want to move forward on multiple fronts. One is more treatment at scale that we've talked about a lot in the Forest Service. How can we ramp up scale and pace? And so I think it's not looking over our shoulder. This type of analysis is not looking over our shoulder. It's looking forward. And what would be the treatment regime that's needed on an annual basis to provide raw materials to different types of enterprises. And so that's the type of work that I would do is forward-looking. So I think the resource assessment that is conducted by the University of Idaho is going to lay out different scenarios for what those removals would look like under different treatment regimes. And I think you're right. We need to, if we're proposing different scale of projects in this region, what would be the reliable cut and removal that would have to take place to provide raw materials for those? So it's a good point. I'm not sure looking over my shoulder does me any good, but this type of analysis is meant to provide answers to what would we have to do moving forward in the future to have viable industry in this region tied to forest restoration.
Thank you, Nate. I think we're trying to go back to the regular schedule here. So I'm going to move on to the next the panel here. So thank you, Nate, again for your great presentation and answering the questions. Thank you. And
thank
people,
you all.
Yeah, great. And people online, I'm sorry I could not pick up any questions you may have on the right now, but please put your questions in the Q&A, and we will